Llwyn Farm, Llanddewi Brefi in Ceredigion hosted a Farming Connect event on the feeding of ewes during the lambing season in order to minimise any losses. The speakers were Kate Phillips from ADAS and Ben Williams from Farming Connect. Sean Evans of Farming Connect explains what the day was all about.
Well, the main aim of today is to bring the latest information to sheep farmers in the area. By bringing an expert down, hopefully they'll all learn something from today and go home and be able to make any tweaks they need to their systems to ensure that they have a successful lambing.
How important are days like these?
Well, I think they're quite important because it's nice to get the specialists within their sectors to different areas of Wales, and it gives the farmers a chance to remind themselves of what they should be doing, and the experts also can give them a few tips, and hopefully they can go home and make the most of their systems.
Well, I've been largely talking about feeding sheep, really, and trying to reduce lamb losses, and really looking at how elements of feeding have a big impact on how many lambs survive. And that can be things like underfeeding or overfeeding, both having a negative impact, and trying to get the feeding just right. In terms of maybe feeding adequately so that you produce enough colostrum, so lambs get lots of good antibodies from the colostrum, and then they are less likely to succumb to disease later in life. So that sort of thing.
Therefore, it is vital that we body condition score our sheep before lambing.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the fundamental things to tell us whether we fed our ewes adequately. And the pens behind me, we really should be putting our hands on the back of ewes as often as we possibly can, because with a fully fleeced ewe, you really can't tell what condition she's in unless you actually get to the bottom of that fleece. So I know with my own ewes, very deep fleece, unless you put your hand on their back, you can't feel the bones, so you need to. And here on the farm here today, a lot of the ewes are shorn, so actually we can see the body condition easily, but it's still important to feel those bones. Completely the opposite when you see a fully fleeced sheep, she looks fit, but touch her and she feels very different. So,
when are the best times that we should be body conditioning, scoring our sheep?
Well, one of the very important times is at weaning time, just to see how fit they are and what rearing the lambs has taken out of them. And then you know how much condition score they need to gain for tupping. And we like to think this sort of ewe, these mule type ewes, would need to be in condition score, say 3.5 at tupping time to maximise the number of lambs they conceive. So that's really important time. So, and we say it takes about 8 weeks on good grass to gain one body condition score. And one score is about 7 to 9 kilograms of body fat. So that helps you to put it in perspective of what she needs to pile on to get into the right condition and how long it's going to take.
And you mentioned the fleeces, and
yep.
As we can see here with Rhys, he's shorn half of his ewes. What do you think about that? Does that help?
Yeah, a lot of ewes, as we all know, like to be outside. Most ewes like to be outside. They're happier in a natural environment. And we bring them in largely to suit ourselves as farmers and shepherds. And that's really to help our management. And actually, when you bring them in, and if the weather, unlike today, if the weather is warm, ewes can be quite heat stressed in a shed because they haven't got the wind and the weather on them, and they actually just get quite uncomfortable. So actually shearing them reduces heat stress and actually helps them to eat more forage, and we probably need less concentrate, so you can have them having bigger lambs through actually feeding them less concentrate. So it's actually quite a good thing to shear them, and you can see body conditions so easily, so you can adjust rations accordingly. And there's other benefits of shearing. The lamb can get to the udder so much more easily, and it's not struggling to find the udder, and after lambing they have clean backsides out on the grass, so they don't get as mucky, and we're not worried about fly strike as much with shorn ewes.
Tell us about the different scenarios, about different kinds of feeding for different kinds of sheep.
Okay, well here today we're obviously on ad lib silage, and that is a fairly typical regime for a lot of sheep farmers in Wales. Luckily here we've got precision chopped grass silage, and that has a easier intake. It's obviously easier to eat than actually pulling silage out of a big bale. So that's a really efficient way of feeding them. Rhys has got an automatic sort of complete diet feeder. He can feed along the face here. But a lot of farmers, the majority of sheep farmers, I would suggest, are using big bales, and that's the most common way of feeding sheep, either big bales of hay or of silage. And tendency is with big bales, we tend to get slightly poorer quality on big bales because it's maybe one big cut of silage, and the digestibility tends to be a little bit lower than it would from clamp. So we tend to need a little bit more concentrate supplementation with big bales. And big bales are quite hard to eat. Long chopped big bale, it takes a lot of pulling out of the silage from the bale. So the intakes on big bale silage are lower than they would be on clamp. And of course, quite a lot of people are still relying on hay because hay is a brilliant feed for sheep if it can be made well. But of course, last season was appalling, and we really struggled to make any decent hay anywhere in the country, I think. This year, there are a few issues with silage being high risk in terms of listeriosis, so I'm a bit worried that that might be an issue.
Lambing time, most farmers, the problem they get is prolapsed ewes. What's your advice on that one?
Oh, prolapse, it's a big issue. Nobody really knows. There's no sort of definite answer to this one. And certainly as I go around the country, people give me all sorts of different theories. The one I rely on most is overfeeding and ewes getting too fat. And obviously it's more of a problem in heavily pregnant ewes with twins or triplets. Obviously we don't see many prolapse single ewes. But I think overfeeding possibly, maybe not getting the right balance of the diet so that we're not quite feeding the right levels of rumen degradable protein and sugar and starch into the rumen to get the fibre digested well. There are different theories. One would be short tail docking is something that's considered, and reducing the sort of muscle tone in that area of the body. And particularly this year, when the weather's been so bad, that a lot of farmers have had to bring their ewes in early. So they might have been in their sheds for at least a month longer than they would normally have been. And I just think the natural habitat of the ewe is roving around fields, grazing, and actually they have to keep fairly fit by doing that. And when you bring them inside, they don't do much. They walk a little distance to the feed face, they deck that, they come back again for a bit of concentrate later in the day, and I think they get very unfit. And I just think maybe that would play a part in terms of their muscle tone and actually keeping everything together. So I think that might be one of them.
And do you feel that scanning is essential?
I do, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm always surprised when farmers don't do it, because the requirements, the energy requirements of a single bearing ewe as opposed to a triplet are enormously different. So, you know, we almost need twice as much energy for a triplet bearing ewe as a single. So if we're feeding them all the same, there's a great danger of getting the single lambs too big and the triplets too small. You might get it right for the twins, but there's some extremes, and there's money to be saved, and there's actually much more effective fostering if you've got, you know, when the singles are lambing, bring a triplet over quickly to foster on when it's actually, you know, the others being born. So yeah, I think it's a really good piece of information as well as a baseline for performance for the flock, because if we know how many lambs are expected, we can measure everything against that later in the year. So how many are reared, how many were scanned, where did they all go in between, how did they go, what did they die from, and let's sort that out and review it next year.
How valuable is a day like this?
Oh, it's extremely valuable, really. It gives a chance. You can read about things in the press or whatever, but it's actually to see things. It sticks in the mind better, really. And it's nice. A lot of farmers came here today. Probably they wouldn't travel 15, 20 miles to an open day. So to have it on a doorstep, really, and you don't lose time from work, really. You just turn up in your work clothes. And we have here for an hour and a half and been done and gone with.
What have you learned from today?
Would consider mainly to maybe start feeding the soya earlier, really, just to boost the milk, really, to hopefully have plenty of milk at lambing time, because the crude protein is a bit lower in the silage this year because it's later been harvested. So hopefully the lambing will be easier then, even though it's expensive feed to put in, but hopefully it'll be money well spent if you have better quality colostrum, really, and give the lamb a good start in life.
And body conditioning scoring, is that important?
Yes, extremely. We try to go through them every fortnight, really. We drenched some of the ewes with fluke now on Saturday, and we selected the thinner ones out of the batches and to put the thinner ones in the same pen, so hopefully reduce the bullying effect, really. So to try and get the optimum condition, 2.5 maybe stroked up to 3 for lambing time, really, which gives a more uniform lambs and hopefully a good milk supply from the ewe, really, afterwards.
Why did you attend today?
Well, it's very topical at the moment. Obviously, we're feeding sheep now. Ewes are more run down than they have been in the past this time of year, and we just want other advice or see what other people are doing.
Anything in particular that you'll be taking home with you?
I think looking at the condition of the ewes and how to get them up to the right condition between now and lambing, I think.
Anything else that you were surprised with?
I don't think I've been surprised with it. I think we know quite a lot of these things, but often we forget things. And the other thing, it just reinforces perhaps what we think we know already. And it may sort of say, oh, you know, it just may add a few other things as well. But I think we know most of what we've seen. But I say it just reinforces what we think we know.